is Transfiguration Sunday. It is the day on which the church, throughout the centuries, has noted and observed that transfiguration that we see in Matthew chapter 16 and Matthew 17 of Jesus Christ there on that high mountain. Now, Matthew chapter 16 is where actually the transfiguration begins, with the realization that Jesus is the Christ. Now understand where Jesus Christ has taken his disciples in Matthew chapter 16, which leads us to Matthew 17. Jesus Christ has taken his disciples, as we're told in Matthew chapter 16, verse 13, to Caesarea Philippi. To Caesarea Philippi. Now, Caesarea Philippi was at the extreme north of the land of Israel. It was about 125 miles north of Jerusalem. In other words, it was away from the religious center of Jerusalem. Caesarea Philippi was a community that was a resort area. It was a place where people would go to be at rest. It was a place where people would go to be at peace. And this is where Jesus Christ takes his disciples. He takes them to this place of rest and peace, and he engages them in a dialogue regarding who the culture of his day and who they say he is. The disciples tell him, well, some say you're a prophet, some say you're John the Baptist. And those things are all good, but they're not good enough. But he asks the question, who do you say that I am? And that is the same question that he points to you and to me, to his people throughout the ages. He says, who do you say that I am? And we have Peter's confession, you are the Christ, you are the Son of the living God. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You see, that needs to be our answer. And it is in that place of peace and rest, that place of repose, that place away from the religious center of the temple, 125 miles to the south. Now understand, the Temple of Jerusalem was the dominating structure. Whenever you came to Jerusalem, no matter which direction you approached Jerusalem from, the first thing you saw was that temple dominating the skyline. You see, the temple was there on that high pinnacle to reflect and to show that God had a special, unique relationship with the nation of Israel. And the entire city of Jerusalem was built to support that relationship. In fact, the whole nation of Israel was built in such a way around the temple and the temple complex in order to show that Israel's relationship with God was unique, and it was at the heart of the national and the individual life of the people. You see, the temple, with all of its grand structures, with all of its offerings, with its priesthood, with all the glorious things that took place at the temple, with the priesthood ministering at the altar and within the sanctuary, and all the accoutrements of the temple, as glorious as they were, it is away from all of that that Jesus Christ took his disciples to a place of peace, a place of rest, in order to engage them in a discussion about who he is. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. In other words, he removes them and all of us away from the legalism that sprung up around the temple. You see, the religious leaders of Jesus' day added a lot of things to the Old Covenant. You see, the religious leaders of the day added things to the Old Covenant. And you see, all those additions that the religious leaders of the day imposed on the people became a burden. It became something it was never intended to be. You see, and this is what Jesus Christ removed his disciples away from, taking them to a place of peace, of rest, a resort. And this place of peace, this place of rest, was at the foot of Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is described in Psalm 133 as being symbolic of where the blessings flow down to the nation of Israel. You see, it was the highest pinnacle in the entire area. Mount Hermon was an important place and the extreme end of the northern boundaries of Israel. 125 miles distant from the life of the temple. In Matthew chapter 17. Now this is after the discussion. This is after Christ's dialogue with his disciples, there in that place of peace, that place of repose, that place of resort, that place of rest. After that discussion, Jesus takes 3 disciples to a high mountain. The only mountain in the area is Mount Hermon. Matthew 17, verse 1. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and his brother John and led them up to a high mountain by themselves. He was transformed in front of them, and his face shone like the sun, even his clothes became white as light. And suddenly Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you want, I will make 3 tabernacles here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." And while he, that is Peter, was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud covered them. And a voice from the cloud said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." And when the disciples heard it, they were terrified, and they fell face down. Then Jesus came and touched them and said, "Get up, and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus, and Jesus alone. So Jesus takes them to this high mountain, and there before them the glory of God is shown. It is far away from the life of the temple that Jesus Christ chooses to reflect and reveal the glory of God. This tells us that when we move away from the legalism of religiosity, when we enter into that place of peace, that place of repose, that place of rest, that we can ascend to the highest mountain, that we can see the glory of God in Jesus. You see, you can never see the glory of God through legalism.